not going to have time to screw around with this once I start talking, so I'll just pull this up now. I promise the relevancy will show up. This is the only thing that impresses my mom, I swear. Cool.
Woo! All right.
Thank you for the clicker. All right. And I'm going to try to keep myself as honest as I can. Hey, everybody. My name's Mike Mournighan. Tonight we're going to talk specifically, and I know someone asked me earlier why I kept saying live storytelling in Austin, because it's a very prescriptive definition that I'm going to lay out for you guys today. And I'm pretty proud of it. And this is, let's get on to my goals. So the first one here is to be prescriptive. What am I talking about when I'm very specifically saying live storytelling in Austin? The second one is going to be why such a thing, why such a specific phrase is worth your time and mine. And last but not least, when I convince you that this is a place that you should spend your time and energy, where to get involved, how to show up, whether that's as a teller or a member of the audience. See, Mickey, I was already pointing it at the screen because that's why I was raised. Some disclaimers. I am not representing anybody that I'm going to talk about tonight. Despite being employed by a couple of the images on screen or being a part of some of those communities, this is all my own language and I don't represent them. Important thing to say when you're talking about small businesses in Austin. So, also I don't own any of the images and they're all Wikimedia Commons. About me, I've been an improviser for about 11 years. And Comedy Sports and MC Herald, if you're an Austin local, we circled for a couple of years pretty strongly. That's where a lot of my background comes from. In the pandemic, I decided to make a comedy meets gaming channel online, and that's called Demo Duo. And then most recently, I've become a storyteller. And that is me winning the Austin Story Slam back in March that was held here on this stage. That story involves Spider-Man, so definitely a nerd night sort of thing to talk about. And on the bottom right hand of this slide is austinstorytelling.com, which is just a link tree that I've put together in Austin because of this obsession to kind of coordinate all of the information that I know about. I don't make any money off of it, but it's something that we're going to talk about today. And I don't want to. I want to be very clear. It's a service I want us all to have because many storytellers don't use Facebook. They don't use Instagram. They don't use socials. And we need a place to put information that isn't just on an ad feeding platform. So, great. You saw my Chinese yo-yo. In the summer of 2010, I returned home from my big city college experience to my super tiny podunk small hometown. It has 2 stoplights. It's living large. And I'm hanging out with my high school best friends, and my friend Justin takes a look at this Chinese yo-yo at my feet and just asks, why do you have that? What in the world? Why would you get such a thing? And I stare at Justin in the eyes and I tell him, man, I don't write, I don't paint, I don't sing, I don't dance, I'm not in theater, I'm not an athlete anymore. I literally don't have another way to get community outside of my profession. And Chinese yo-yo was just something I latched onto. In front of my high school friends, I did a couple of tricks, a couple more than I had here today. None of them were impressed because they've been to a circus and Mike was working on this for like 2 weeks, so great. I didn't stay with Chinese yo-yo because in college, a 8 a.m. Saturday meetup is not a good place for Mike. But that's okay, because in 2013, when I moved to Austin, Texas, my manager surprised me by being a lifelong improviser, specifically with Comedy Sports. And he said, Mike, go out and try it. And I was like, well, I'm improv curious. And he goes, well, just do it. Like Nike that stuff. Like Sarah's saying, you just got to do it. And so I did. And for the next 7 years, one night a week, maybe two, I was at rehearsal, I was at class, I was at a show. And I loved it. I learned so many new things. I got a community. I finally had this thing that Justin didn't have. He had his own community. He's a great drummer, and I love him deeply. He's a great friend. But now I have improv, and I'm his annoying improv friend for 7 years. And then the pandemic hits. And in 2020, that collapsed, and I went home, and I didn't feel it was right to talk about improv or to perform improv and to socialize on a screen when I spent 8 to 10 hours on a screen for work every day. And so I shut down and I lost a lot of connection. 2 years later, I finally dig myself out of the COVID hole, which I'm sure many of us are familiar with, and I get back to improv and I'm having a good time, but I realize I need to go and sharpen the saw. I've been away too long. Let me see what class really fits into this specific schedule of mine. And Merlin Works is offering a Storytelling 101 course. So sign up for the class. And the first day of class is a bunch of people doing improv games, String of Pearls, or we get Sorry I'm Late, all of these improv games, and there's this bonding moment, meeting each other, and then it's all fun and games. And the homework for the first class is a really fun story from the Moth. And it was the first time I'd pulled up the Moth Podcast. I kind of knew what it was, but it was the first time I really listened intently. And in the second class, everyone came to class with these funny as hell stories. And I had this story about my time on a dairy farm. And it kind of gets you in the gut. You start laughing a lot. But between the second and the third class, the stories got real serious. And when I showed up to the third class, my friend shared a story about her grandfather in the hospital and how that affected her. And the teacher started to share stories that were deeper and about real change in her life. And I realized that's so cool. All of these strangers are now in the room sharing vulnerable moments. I signed up to get funny, and what I got was a human-to-human connection that I'd been missing for a very long time. And that's why I decided to speak tonight. I wanted to talk about the obsession. I wanted to talk about the human connection. And ultimately, I wanted to pitch, I don't want something from you. I want to give you something. And because of that, I put together this talk for Nerd Night. One thing that I should mention, the little screen over here is too small for Mike to read without his glasses, but is cracking the case. Recently as a TA, I had this experience where a student came in and they're like, oh, I don't have a story, Mike. I'm so screwed. I'm never going to put anything together. And the best moment of that week for me was showing them that not only did they have one story that they could tell on stage and really get people feeling and have that interpersonal connection, but they had 3 damn stories to share. That is why I'm obsessed. There's just something so special about it. Spread the word in organization, again, what I'm trying to get at tonight. And to write a love letter. I don't think that we do that often with communities that we enjoy. This is a public space, and it's an opportunity for me to say thank you. So that's one of my goals. This is the theme. Everyone can tell. Everyone can be a storyteller, and everyone can witness a story being told. I hope that you feel that same way when we're done today. Where do storytellers come from? Is there like a tree that you go and pluck tellers from? And the bad stories are lower to the ground, and the good stories are up where the giraffes get them? No. Austin storytellers, they come from the dramatic arts. They come from writers. There are stand-ups who tell stories, and obviously they're a little funnier than the rest of us. There are improvisers, and I think I get to fall into that camp pretty strongly. There are Toastmasters, which is an important part of storytelling as an art form. So, And shout out to those folks who come in through Capital City Toastmasters and other things. Then you have musicians who, oddly enough, are excited because music is such a powerful thing to them. They have a lot of stories to tell. But most importantly, stories come from wherever you are, and tellers come from wherever you are. So whatever your background is, maybe you're actually good at circus stuff and didn't just pick it up to impress your high school friends. That could be a great place. Maybe you're a race car driver. That could be a great place. Or maybe you're a business tycoon, but you have like secrets that you really struggle with. That could be it. I turned 34 this year. Y'all already know stories, so I'm not going to spend too much time, and Sarah did a great job too presenting on what a story is in the most generic sense. That's the story spine. You've seen Finding Nemo, you know Aladdin. You know how to build a story generally. We're hardwired for it as human beings, whether that's in myths or TV, comics, movies, books, anything and everything. And that is important when we define a story at large. Here's the prescriptive part. A story can be about anyone. It can be anywhere. You can talk about anything. But live storytelling is about you. It's true personal stories that only you could possibly tell. You craft those stories into little bites, little snippets, 5, 6, 7, 8-minute segments to share your life on stage. You don't do it with notes. Tonight having this up here is like, whoa, I really want to look at it the whole time. That's crazy. And each of those stories is about how you changed. It could be big, it could be small. You could be faced with an opportunity to make a change, but decide not to. And that still can make a great story. The whole point, the whole power for me is that a storyteller gets up and tells you about that change, a change that's probably not observable from the outside. And so that secret inner world gets exposed for a second. And then someone in the audience has that same secret, and you get to connect. So I want to continue on my prescription. Sorry, mate, that's not a story. Whether it's a fun fact about your day, not a story. Whether it's a fun fact about life, not a story. Are you bragging? Not a story. Great work on hunting the largest bear you shouldn't have shot. Trophy hunting, not a story. Sexual conquests, not a story. Anecdotes, we're going to come back to that one. Too soon, edgelord humor, not a story. Whether you're under the influence, being drunk and high, you know, that can be a wonderful experience. It's going to make for a terrible, terrible story. Why? Because all of these things lack change. And yeah, I went with a pun. Yeah, you can be mad at me. That's fine. They all lack change. And so you get up, and from the beginning to the end, it's like a poorly written Marvel film. Nothing changed. And I love good, well-written Marvel films, so you ask me about that. An anecdote is why I put yet in the title. An anecdote is a real confusing piece of a story, or an anecdote is easy to confuse with a story because when you tell an anecdote, you're usually telling it to somebody who already knows you. And so the anecdote is in this place where they know you before the anecdote and they know you after the anecdote. And so in their own brain, they stitch that story together for you. But you don't have the benefit of that context when you get up and share in front of strangers or go on Twitch or anywhere else. And you need to build that context. So, okay, Mike, we know what storytelling is. We know stories aren't anecdotes. Thank you so much. Why do you know? Because of the elephant in the room called podcasts. You've listened to The Moth. You've listened to, oh my God, my list is, I got to look over here, the Mortified Podcast. You've listened to Risk and all of these other things. I think Dublin's the last one. You've listened to these podcasts. And so maybe you like storytelling. Maybe you're like, hell yeah, you don't need to tell me what storytelling is, Mike. I know what storytelling is. I listen to these podcasts. And so what I want to reiterate is I am telling you about live storytelling in Austin. Does live and local make a difference? Did you forget COVID happened? It so makes a difference. And this is going to tick along as I talk about these things and maybe repeat a little bit. But the space that we share, even here tonight, it's a gift we're given to one another. It's a gift we're given to the nerds on stage. It's a gift we're given to the bar. Space and occupation of space is so important. And when a room takes a big gasp in at the surprise in the middle of a story, you cannot recreate that in a podcast. Your community and your neighbors. We're going to talk about the locality of this. There are those secret worlds. When you listen to a podcast, maybe it's Robert Downey Jr. or somebody else that's famous, that secret world isn't your world. That secret world is far away from you. But when you go to a live and local storytelling show, that secret world runs into you at H-E-B. That secret world is so nearby. It's about gratitude and bonding, something that you cannot express gratitude to a podcast. And these moments, again, they can't be stolen. ChatGPT cannot generate my life story for me, although as far as I'm learning, it could tell it for me live. That's something I've definitely learned in the last couple weeks. So hell yeah, live and local storytelling does make a difference. Much like a nerd night, somebody can get off the stage and you can shake their hand and say, hey man, me too. I had that same experience. So why show up? And when you show up, what might you show up to be a teller for? Well, you need to share for you. Maybe it's this intrinsic thing, something bubbling over. You have a story you definitely need to share. So maybe you think somebody else needs to hear this. There's that moment when you're told, ask your question. Maybe somebody else is just not brave enough to ask that question. That is why you might be telling a story. Maybe you're going through an identity change. Maybe you're going through a crisis and you need to express some ownership. That's a great reason to get up and tell. Maybe you just want to perform, entertain, educate, tell people why you spent $40 on this Chinese yo-yo in college and don't do anything with it. Could be that. Push your comfort zone, right? So one of the worst parts about COVID is that all of our comfort zones shrank. They became smaller and smaller. If you need to feel heard, there is something selfish but also rewarding about being heard over a microphone with a small amount of amplification and bonding. Why would you attend a show? It's all the same stuff reciprocally, of course. Like, there's not going to be a surprise on this. You don't know what you need to hear. Some people break down when they figure out that was also my story. And it strikes them in the heart. That's why you go to the show, man. Human connection. I do not have a house of faith. I don't go to worship. And these story events are the closest experience that I have to that. And that's pretty cool from a secular perspective. You get to broaden your world. These are experiences that you might not ever have. I have, for example, never skydived. But if somebody tells me a great story about skydiving, I might be here to listen. Entertain and educate, the emotional range, practice your deep listening, and of course the bonding. There are so many things that you get out of watching somebody else, whether you know them or not, get on stage and be vulnerable. Nerd Night taps into that, which is why I wanted to come and talk about this thing that I love at Nerd Night. In a Nerd Night, we usually get to put a little bit of a barrier up and talk about something somewhat far away from our heart. But in storytelling, the closer to the heart, the better. Okay, so the live and local part is going to come in total fashion. This is where you can go. These are the institutes in Austin, Texas, where you can get out and do live storytelling. And the reason Austin is so damn special for live storytelling is because it's a little bit fractured. The Moth in the bottom left-hand corner here, and I know I'm running out of time now. The Moth in the bottom left-hand corner here is represented in most of the other big cities in our country, but it doesn't exist here in the same way. So instead, we have all of the things that I have up here, and I'm going to rapid fire through them. This is important. Recently in the calendar year, everything happened to be on Thursday. So if you want to get into storytelling, clear your Thursday nights. I promise it's worth your time. Drinking with the Saints, Bill's going to talk about that in a bit. Drinking with the Saints, I don't remember how much I put on each of these slides, but since Bill's here, we'll skip through. The Moth. I said they're not here, and I meant that, but they do show up with a highly curated show, maybe once a year, called the Moth Main Stage. That's an important place. It's done at the Paramount, but it's not the same because those people are touring. They are not your live and local people. The Moth also has the Houston Story Slam that happens every Tuesday night, which I can't get to because I run a TV show on Tuesday nights, but that is the traditional place where people come for live storytelling. Drive over to Houston, put your name in a hat, get 5 minutes on stage. Then you have the exact opposite of that. Hyde Park Storytelling is a hyper-local event. It is a first-come, first-served to sign up, and they're not curated. Hundreds of people come out to these events. They're every couple of months, and it is a sight to behold. If you don't follow Hyde Park Storying, do so, and you'll see that they've been covered recently in a lot of places as one of those key moments of magic in Austin, Texas. Then there's Merlin Works, which is how I got involved. I TA for Merlin Works now as a storytelling TA, so it's important to me. They have the shows of the Cauldron. Merlin Works has improv and stand-up and musical improv and storytelling, and so the Cauldron is their big mix of all of those things, right? That show's coming up on next Saturday. You have shows that you can attend for Merlin Works when it's their classes. They have a 101, a 201, a 301. Again, I'm not being paid to tell you this. I swear, God's honest truth, they have no idea I was putting this together. But when they offered me to be a TA. What I want to highlight about the student showcases, though, is how special it is to know someone is getting on stage for the first time and that they've prepared. And as a teacher, that is heartbreaking and tear-jerking to know they're going from 0 to 1 on that stage. Testify takes over this stage on the first Thursday of every month, and they do that for their curated show. And Testify is a great production. You come on out, again, Thursday. Hey. Testify has also recently started to fill the hole that the Moth hasn't with the Austin Story Slam. This is a great place to get in your freestyle efforts and to come on and just maybe give it a shot in a low stakes environment. So the Austin Story Slam happens every couple months. And Stories on the Lawn, where I've been graciously invited to speak. This is out in front of the Neil Cochran House Museum in West Campus. This is a rain or shine event. You either get to tell in front of the great big house and the great big lawn, or inside in this old historic home in Austin. Curated, themed, but a public application. Then, last but not least, is Fallout Theater's Fallout Storytelling Hour. Fallout Storytelling Hour is produced by Robert Segovia and often pulls from the local comedy talent who get up and try to be a little bit more vulnerable than you would see them in a stand-up set. If you haven't been to the Fallout Theater space, of course I encourage that, but it is intimate by its very nature, and so you really are going to absorb what they have to say. I'm almost done, I swear to God, Mickey. Thank you for the little extra minutes. Group education. I would love to say, I think one-on-one coaching is incredible. And I think you should get that. And it's a way to go from an 8 or a 9 to a 10. But if you're somebody who's like, I don't really know if this is for me, I think group education is a great way to go. Because you get that experience in a safer place, that bonding, that secret world to secret world connection inside of a classroom. And Merlin Works and Testify both offer experiences like this. So I'd really recommend taking a look at that. And last but not least is my thank you. These are all the producers of the local shows. I'm choking up. Every one of them puts time and effort and energy to find you a space, to set up a microphone, to put the camera on, and you have to be grateful, even if you haven't met them. Aaron and Matt, for example. Don't know you, but I really am grateful for you. Everybody else I've missed that's not on this list. And for me, Paul and Kristen Drenning. So I spent a lot of time with them last year. I had a great deal to share. They gave awesome feedback and really helped me curate my love for storytelling over the last year. So thank you guys for that. And my call to action here, through the tearing of me, is mark your calendar. You know, get tickets, get involved, come and tell. And everything that I've talked about tonight can be found on austinstorytelling.com. So thanks. Oh, yeah. I almost ran us out of time.
No, you're cool.
2-minute
Great.
drill.
Perfect length. All right. We have some questions already from Twitch, and then we'll go around the room. All right.
This is going to be my mom.
Maybe. What's her handle?
I can't tell you that or I'll dox her, but...
Okay. This is from Love and Truth.
Not my mom.
Cool.
Unless mom made a new handle so I couldn't dox her. That's different.
All right. Okay. So they wrote like a novel for television. So first and foremost, thank you for your power and generosity. The question: has there been a moment during the telling that a discovery or a deepening has been revealed to you and changed your perspective on the night, like during your storytelling?
Yeah. A few months ago, I think when, not when Bill and I shared the stage, but when Paul and I were at the 301 showcase, I told a story that I won't regale you with because it's better when you get 5 or 6 minutes to do it. But I thought the story meant one thing. And at the end, seeing how I took an action and expressed autonomy in my own life, I realized the story meant something completely different. So, absolutely.
Wow. Very cool. Another question from Event 44.
Hey, Event 44. Good to see you, buddy.
Okay.
Not my mom. Not my mom.
Just checking. All right. If I have an idea for a story, how do I tell if it's worth workshopping and iterating on, or if I should search for a new idea?
The chances that 99% of the time, if you think there's a story there, and you think that with your emotions and not because you wrote it down and did a bunch of calculus, it's worth working on Event 44 for sure. And Event 44 is from the Demo Duo online community at Twitch, so thanks for showing up, buddy.
All right, let's open it up to the room. First question in the back.
Hi, thanks for speaking. I really enjoyed that. So I'm familiar with another storytelling night specifically for the queer world, the queerosphere.
Sure, yeah.
And that is Greetings from Queer Mountain, which takes place at Cheer Up Charlie's.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with any other storytelling nights that cater specifically to audiences who are in some kind of minority, racial, sexual, something? Thank you. Disability. Yeah.
So I would love for someone to submit Greetings from Queer Mountain into the website so that I can add it to the calendar, because I'm not a member of that community natively, and so I'd love to hear more about it. I know that there are pop-up shop stories, places for veterans and other specialty groups. But what I've tried to focus on here today is stuff that people can find publicly, but also stuff that has a recurring sentiment. So if Greeting from Queer Mountain, I'm sorry it's not on here if it's recurring, I'd love to get that information and put it up. But yeah, what ends up happening in these one-off shows is that somebody has a passion to put other people on stage, and they make it happen for their smaller community. So you're welcome.
That's very much the Nerd Night story, too. That it was originally a one-off. And it went so well.
that it kept going and going and going.
And now worldwide.
I do wanna support the. I bought the Nerd Nite book and I got it signed, so it's worth your time, y'all.
Great. Next question.
Hello, friend.
Hey, Leigh.
Okay, so I have a question. Since you have your background in improv, and you spoke a little bit about people in theater, people in comedy. Do you feel like storytelling, like you make an outline and you memorize a monologue, or do you just feel like you get some points down and you just improvise based off of that? Like, what's your total take for how you create your stories?
I'm so glad you asked this because I pulled it out of my slide deck and I feel like you're a plant. Crafting a story it's really like writing a story. Like Sarah was saying earlier, there's a self-fulfillment in here that you really have to express. And for improvisers, that self-fulfillment is not going to have a full script. For writers, it might have a full script. It really depends. And for Toastmasters, it may also have a full script. And I would say that in a broad stroke, most of the improvisers have bullets in their head and they move from point 1 to point 2 to point 3. I've seen a lot of Toastmasters with incredibly good delivery. And I've seen people who have taken a lot of time to write their story, and it has different pros and cons to it. Me personally, I focus on the first part of the story, the last part of the story, and I'm a real stickler with the students for not spoiling the surprise. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing tonight. You had mentioned that one of the kind of pivotal moments as you were learning how to storytell was that transition from funny storytelling to vulnerable storytelling. And as you've leaned into that, I'm wondering if you've had to deal with and how you've dealt with any shame that's come up in exposing those parts of yourself.
I think I heard the first part of the question, which was maybe about the journey, but would you mind repeating it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just wondering, as you've leaned more into sharing more vulnerably, have you had to deal with shame? And if so, how have you dealt with that?
Yes, thanks. Yeah. Well, comedy is a shield, right? Every stand-up in the world will tell you, I'm a depressed clown behind this mask. And for that reason, when I stopped focusing on funny stories, I had to admit some things about myself. I do think that ultimately there's a therapeutical part of storytelling where you need to say something. It needs to be heard. But I definitely know that there's a line where, I can tear up on stage, but if I start bawling, I probably shouldn't tell that story. My partner has been great in helping me work through some of the harder moments and also identifying stories as well. So I'm really grateful for that. And one challenge I want to add on top of that is once you start telling your stories publicly and you have a villain in your story, you need to be honest about that villain, right? These are true stories. And so how do you do that? Were they really as bad as you thought? How much of that villain is you, and can you tie that in? So I've had to deal with some of my own choices being catalysts to things I maybe was blaming on other people when I told the story more privately. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Al.